So here's a little video to help you understand the weather forecast for Clonea Beach in Dungarvan. So the first thing is we need to look at the shape of the landscape because that determines how the weather forecast will affect this particular place. So here's a map of the Dungarvan area. We've got Dungarvan town here, we've got Ring over here, and we've got Clonea Beach up along here. So any forecast that you look at, it's mainly the wind that you're interested in. And the wind will be shown in the forecast in terms of the direction it's coming from. So if we look at the map here, north is at the top, south is at the bottom, east is over here on the right, and west is on the left. So if the forecast says there's going to be a northerly wind, that means the wind is coming from the north. So it'll be flowing from the top here down to the bottom on the map. So that's a northerly wind. A westerly wind will be coming from the west here, the left hand side of the map, and flowing towards the east. That's a westerly wind. A southerly wind will be coming from the bottom and will be flowing up towards the top, and an easterly wind will be coming from the right and flowing towards the left. And then of course you'll get things like northeast wind, which is one coming from this corner going in that direction. A southeast wind is one coming from down here and going in that direction. Similarly for a southwest wind will be going that way, and a northwest wind will be going this way. So it's important to understand the shape of the landscape because the land shelters the sea, or at least it shelters the sea that's close to the land. So for example, a northwest wind, so one that starts up here and blows in this direction, the land here is going to shelter the sea here. So it means that quite a strong northwest wind can be blowing across the land, but the sea immediately close to the land will be quite calm and sheltered because the wind is the area is being sheltered by the land. And if you take the opposite situation, a southeast wind, one that starts from here and blows in that direction, will make this area quite rough, even if it's not a very strong southeast wind, because there's no shelter here and the wind is blowing directly onto the beach without any shelter, and it has the opportunity to push up the water and make waves over a long distance in the sea. So these waves are all pushed towards the shore and it makes this area here rough. So the direction of the wind is important, that you take it into consideration when you look at the shape of the landscape. So the worst wind for Clonea is obviously southeast, and the best wind for Clonea is northwest. But north is also fine and west is also fine because they all those areas are those directions are all sheltered for this part here. A southwest wind, which would be coming from this direction, would, depending on how strong it is, may be rough here or slightly rough. Obviously we're getting a small bit of shelter from this area of land here at Balnacorty, but still, generally speaking, a southwest wind has the potential to be rough here, but not as bad as a southeast wind would be. A northeast wind coming from this direction will be a little bit better than a southwest wind because the headland here at Ballyvoyle is giving shelter for the beach. So again, northwest wind, a little bit rough, not as bad as or northeast wind rather, a little bit rough, not as bad as a southwest wind, but definitely not as good as a north or a northwest wind. An east wind will be quite bad here because there's no shelter, and a south wind will be quite bad here also because there's no shelter. So the worst wind directions for Clonea are south, southeast and east. And if the wind is coming from any of those three directions and the strength is not particularly strong, if it's only a moderate wind, it's enough to make it rough in Clonea. Whereas if the wind is coming from the north or the northwest or the west, you can have quite a strong wind and it'll still be perfectly calm in here close to the beach at Clonea. So right, let's look at where you can actually get your forecast from. First of all, we'll have a look at the Met Éireann website, and then we'll have a look after that at another one called Wind Guru. And it's always good to get a forecast from more than one site, because remember, a forecast is just a forecast. It's like an estimate of what the weather might be like. So if you get several estimates from different sources, you'll have a better idea of what the weather is actually going to be like. I'm only going to look at 2 sites today, but there are other ones you can check out as well. There's one called Wind Finder. There's another one called Magic Seaweed, and there's loads of them on the web that you can check out to get forecasts. So let's look at Met Éireann first. So when you go onto the homepage of Met Éireann, you get a general forecast for Ireland, but there's up here on this forecasts menu, there's several other ones available. So initially I'm going to have a look at the 5-day forecast, which is good for looking ahead for the next few days. It's a computer generated forecast as opposed to one which is being prepared by an actual weather forecaster, and I'll be showing you in a moment another forecast that's actually prepared by a person, by a qualified weather forecaster, but most of these ones which I'm going to show you are actually computer generated. So this one is divided into rainfall, temperature, wind and wave. We're mainly interested in wind. So when you switch on to the wind tab, as you move your mouse across the map from left to right, it moves forward through the next few days. You can see the little knob here at the bottom moving left and right as I move my mouse, and that's showing forecast over the next few days. And up here at the top it shows you what you're actually looking at the moment. So this is Sunday at midday, for example. The length of the arrow indicates the strength of the wind. So in here over the land, we've got arrows with almost no leg on them. That means very little, very weak wind, almost no wind. Whereas out here in the sea, we have arrows with long legs on them, and that's much stronger wind. And also the colour indicates the strength of the wind. So these are the colours here on the side, and this is measured in knots, which are nautical miles per hour. So that's one knot is a little bit more than one normal land mile per hour. But I guess what you need to remember is what's a strong wind and what's a weak wind. So any of the grey ones here are relatively weak, but once you get into the colours, it's getting increasingly stronger. So if we look at, say, for example, Friday morning, tomorrow morning at 6 a.m, we can see that in the area of Clonea, which is down at the bottom of the coast, south coast, in the centre of the south coast, we can see that there's a 7 to 11 southwesterly wind over the land, and an 11 to 17 knot southwesterly wind over the sea. And then if we move a little bit forward, say to midday on tomorrow, Friday, we can see the wind direction has changed down around to south now, and it's also gotten stronger. So we've got close to the shore, we've got 11 to 17 knots, and a little bit further off shore we've got 17 to 22. Now we already know that the south is a bad wind direction for Clonea, because when we were looking at the map a moment ago, we could see that there's no shelter for winds coming from the south. So we can see that by midday tomorrow, things are going to be quite rough at Clonea and probably not suitable for swimming. Whereas if we go back to 6 a.m. in the morning, it's southwest and it's moderately strong but not too bad. So Clonea might be a little bit choppy, but it's probably going to be okay for swimming, or certainly not as bad as it will be at midday. So that's the 5-day forecast. Now they also do a short range forecast, which is more detailed. So if I click on this short range one here, it works pretty much the same. There's 4 tabs. I'm going to look at the wind tab here, and it just gives it to me for the next 10 or 12 hours. But it's a more detailed and probably more accurate forecast than the 5-day forecast we were looking at a moment ago. So again, as I move my mouse across the screen, it changes from 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4 this afternoon, and so on. So we can see, for example, that at 10 a.m. today, there is quite a strong southwesterly. In fact, it's probably south-southwest. In other words, it's slightly to the south side of southwest is the wind direction, which is fairly bad for Clonea, and it's also quite a strong. It's 17 to 22 knots, and that's probably going to make Clonea not swimmable at the moment. And as we go through the day, we can see the wind direction is going a bit more southwest. Still not wonderful for Clonea because it's moderately strong. 17 to 22 is fairly strong. And So today is probably not a great day for swimming Clonea the whole day. I want to draw your attention to this chart over here. The next forecast I'm going to look at is what's called the Met-Éireann Sea Area Forecast. It's like the traditional Met-Éireann forecast for fishermen and so on. And it's actually created, unlike the ones we've looked at so far, the actual sea area forecast is created by qualified meteorologists, by weathermen or weather ladies, and it covers a short range of time, but it is regarded as probably the most accurate sea area forecast for the immediate future that you can get. And the wind strength in the sea area forecast uses this Beaufort scale. So this just gives you a conversion between knots, which are nautical miles per hour, and the Beaufort scale. So we can see here that force 3, force 4, force 5, etc. Now, to put this in perspective for you, force 8 is a gale, force 9 is a strong gale, force 10 is a storm, and 11 and 12 are basically hurricane strength winds. So for a southerly or a southeast wind at Clonea Beach, in other words, a wind that there's no shelter and it's blowing straight in onto the beach, the worst wind for Clonea, you probably wouldn't go swimming if it was stronger than force 4. Whereas for a north or northwest or west wind at Clonea, in other words, the best wind direction for Clonea, you probably would be okay up to nearly force 7. So the direction is important. So let's have a look at this sea area forecast, which is, as I said, probably the most accurate one. So it starts off with a general discussion about the meteorological situation around Ireland. Not unless you're interested in the details of how forecasts are constructed, that's probably not something you need to worry too much about. These forecasts are prepared every 6 hours. So there's a new forecast every 6 hours, and it gives you a forecast for the next 12 hours. So in this case, this forecast is from 6 a.m. Thursday, until 6 a.m. Friday. And at the very end of the forecast, it gives you the outlook for the further 24 hours until 6 a.m. Saturday. But that's only a very minor amount of detail. The main detail is in this part of the forecast here. Now, it gives you, it divides up the coast of Ireland into segments. So this paragraph is for one segment, this paragraph is for a different segment, and this paragraph is for a different segment again. So you need to identify which segment is for our area and just read that part. And it uses a standard set of names of places around the coast to divide up the segments. And if you're not sure where any of these places are, you can look at this map here. If I just bring this over here, and it actually tells you the names of all the places that will be used in the forecast. And the segments always go in a clockwise direction. So for example, it might say from Fairhead to Carlingford Lough to Wicklow Head. It would never say from Fairhead to Bloody Foreland to Erishead. It would never go anti-clockwise. It's always clockwise that it goes. So if we look at Carlingford Lough to Wicklow Head to Carnsore Point, does not include Dungarvan, because it's like Carlingford Lough is up there down to Wicklow Head down to Carnsore Point. So it's kind of this area here on the east coast. Carnsore Point to Mizenhead to Loophead, that's us. So Carnsore Point is over here in Wexford, Mizenhead is down in West Cork, and Loophead is up there somewhere. So basically this paragraph is for the south coast, so this is for us. So if we look, it's telling us the wind is west, but soon changing to south, and it'll be force 4 or 5. So as I mentioned to you earlier, anything greater than a force 4 where the wind is from a bad direction, like south is a bad direction for Clonea, it's probably going to be too rough to swim there. And then it's saying before noon it'll go southwest, so south until noon, and then southwest around noon it'll be changing, and it'll go force 4 to 5, so the same strength but just a slight change in direction. And overnight then it'll go west, and it'll increase slightly to force 6 and be gusty, which means there'll be sudden strong blasts of wind. So that's an interpretation of the sea area forecast on the Met-Éireann website, and that's pretty can be pretty accurate for the immediate future. So let's have a look at Wind Guru, which is a computer generated forecast, but also tends to be quite accurate. So this is the page, this is the Dungarvan page for Wind Guru. The easiest way to find is this: if you just type in Wind Guru Dungarvan into Google, it'll bring you straight to this page. So there's actually 4 separate forecasts on this page, and I'm going to draw your attention to 2 of them that are the most relevant. This one at the top, this GFS 27 kilometers forecast, gives you the next week. So this is today, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday again next week. And the other one I'm going to show you is down here towards the end of the page, and it's the WRF 9 kilometer forecast. And it gives you an hour by hour forecast for the next couple of days, in this case up until midday on Saturday. But we'll go back to the other one. So what does GFS mean? It's the name of the computer model they use to generate the forecast, and WRF is a different model that they use to generate this forecast. So you're benefiting from 2 different computer models getting 2 slightly different forecasts. What does the 27 kilometers mean? It means that the computer model that generates this forecast divides up the surface of the Earth into squares that are 27 kilometers on each side. So this forecast is for a square that's 27 kilometers by 27 kilometers, and Dungarvan is in that square somewhere. This one is a 9 kilometer square, so it's a more accurate forecast. It's more local to Dungarvan, so it's a 9 kilometer square, which includes Dungarvan. So let's actually look at what's in this forecast. So you've got wind speed and wind gust speed in knots. So each column here is for a 3-hour period. So this is from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. This is from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. This is from 10 a.m. to lunchtime. This is from lunchtime to 4 p.m. and so on. So one column is for one segment of time. So everything from the top here right down as far as here is for 10 a.m. until lunchtime today. So if we look at that, it's telling us that the average wind speed will be 13 knots, but it will be gusting up to 22 knots, which is quite a strong wind, and it's color coded as well to give you an indication of what's a strong wind and what isn't. And it's telling us the wind direction here is going to be south-southwest. So it's slightly more south than southwest. It's kind of between southwest and south. Which is quite a bad direction for Clonea. So we know that Clonea by 10 o'clock this morning is going to be quite rough if this forecast is correct. This is giving you an estimate of the wave height. This is kind of aimed at surfers, so it may give you an indication of how bad the waves are going to be in terms of meters. Wave period here is, I believe this is how often the waves will come in terms of seconds. Again, I'm not sure how that works for surfers, but it's not really too relevant, I don't think, for swimmers. This is an estimate of the wave direction. Again, this is kind of down to the wind direction and the shape of the coast and so on. This is the air temperature in degrees centigrade. And this is cloud cover, high, medium and low. So this is in terms of the height of the clouds in the atmosphere. So 95, it's telling us that 95% of the sky in the lower portion of the atmosphere here will be covered in cloud. That's quite a lot of cloud. It's telling us also that nearly 90% in the mid portion of the atmosphere and 95% in the high portion of the atmosphere is going. So basically there's going to be a lot of heavy cloud at between 10 and lunchtime today. And we can see that later on in the day the cloud is decreasing. Precipitation is telling us how much rain is going to fall, or snow or hailstones or whatever, but I suppose usually rain this time of the year. Again, the colours give you an indication of how much rain that really is, but it's in this case it's 1.7 millimeters for the 3-hour period that's covered by this column. And so on. Each column then just covers the 3-hour period right through for the next week. So if we look forward and try and find good times for swimming, so we can see on Saturday between 7 and lunchtime there's very weak wind, so 5 to 6 knots or 2 knots. That's very weak wind, and the wind direction doesn't really matter. When the wind is so weak, the wind direction is not that important. So Clonea will be okay probably for a swim Saturday morning if this forecast is correct. Now bear in mind the forecasts do change. So this forecast was prepared today. If we come back tomorrow, we'll get a different forecast, which probably will be a bit more accurate for Saturday because it's that little bit closer to it. So keep that in mind, that if you're looking several days ahead, remember to come back and check the forecast in another day or two, because you'll probably get a more accurate one. Sunday morning, so Saturday evening, then the wind is like getting a bit stronger and it's a bad direction for Clonea. So Saturday evening, the Clonea will probably be rough. Sunday morning looks okay for Clonea. It's a very weak wind, 5 or 6 knots, and the direction is west, which is very good for Clonea. Maybe around lunchtime Sunday it might be a little bit choppy at Clonea, but not too bad because it's quite a weak wind. It's only 7 or 8 knots. And then if we look Sunday evening, the wind is getting stronger, but it's now gone round to the northwest, which is a perfect direction for Clonea. So Clonea should be calm Sunday evening, even though the wind is quite strong. And so on. You can look on through it. So if we go down and look at the 9 kilometer, the WRF 9 kilometer, this is giving us the same information, but just it's giving us hour by hour. So the one we looked at a moment ago, the 27 kilometer, each column was for 3 hours. In this one, each column is for 1 hour. So it's a more detailed forecast and it only covers the next couple of days. So this is usually, for the immediate future, this is usually a more accurate forecast to look at. And so it's telling me here's Thursday, it's showing me all the rain we're going to have today, which is absolutely wonderful. And it's also showing me the wind speed and the wind directions, exact same information, and the amount of cloud and so on that we were looking at above on the other forecast. So again, we can see that between now and Friday evening, Clonea is probably going to be rough because we're looking at fairly strong winds and not a great direction for Clonea either. But then by Saturday morning, we can see again here the wind speed is going back to nearly nothing, so it'll be pretty much calm, and the direction is not important when it's so calm. So Saturday morning looks okay for Clonea, but by lunchtime Saturday it's looking like Clonea might be starting to get slightly choppy because this is a bad direction for Clonea, but probably still okay. I mean, 6 knots is still a fairly weak wind, and so on. So that's my little tour of how to interpret the weather forecast for Clonea Beach. I hope you find it useful, and it might help you to make your own decisions about when is a good time to swim.